In Los Angeles, power doesn't always look like the movies tell you it does. Sometimes it isn't the loudest man in the room, or the actor on the poster, or the director calling the shots. Sometimes it's the person whose name appears at the bottom of a memo, the one who signs the checks, the one who knows how to move money from one corner of the studio to another without anyone noticing. And in the mid-1970s, no one understood that better than David Begelman, the sleek, charming, silver-tongued president of Columbia Pictures, a man who rose to the top of Hollywood with a smile, a handshake, and a secret that would eventually blow the industry apart. Begelman had Hollywood in his blood long before he ever sat in a studio president's chair. He'd been a powerful talent agent, representing names big enough to open any door on the lot. He had charisma, polish, and an instinct for survival that made people underestimate just how sharp he really was. To executives, he was the perfect fit, a man who could schmooze the stars, calm the board, and make Columbia look stable at a time when the studio badly needed stability. In a business where image is everything, Begelman looked like the cure for all their problems. But Hollywood's greatest weakness has always been its confidence in its own myths. And one of those myths was that the man at the top, the president, the executive, the polished authority figure, must be the one person in the building who could be trusted with the money. Begelman used that myth like a skeleton key. It started with a check, a single, seemingly harmless studio payment on the books. In 1976, Academy Award-winning actor Cliff Robertson was preparing his taxes when something didn't add up. Columbia Pictures had reported paying him $10,000, money he never received. Robertson wasn't the kind of man to shrug off a financial discrepancy, especially one related to taxes, so he and his accountant began asking questions, quiet ones at first, the kind that normally get brushed aside in an industry used to messy paperwork. But this time, the questions didn't fade, they echoed, and when Columbia's accounting department pulled the file, the truth hit like a spotlight. The check had been issued to Robertson, cashed, cleared, and the endorsement signature on the back wasn't his. It was forged. The money had gone into an account owned by the president of the studio, David Begelman. The discovery didn't expose the whole scandal at once. It simply opened the first crack. When Columbia's internal investigators widened that crack, they found more irregularities, multiple forged checks, false reimbursements, questionable expense claims, and financial paperwork routed in ways that didn't make sense unless someone wanted it that way. It wasn't a single moment of weakness. It wasn't a clerical accident. It was a pattern. The studio faced a crisis unlike anything it had imagined. A scandal this severe should have been simple to address. Suspend Begelman, report him, cut ties, protect the studio's integrity. But this was Hollywood, and Hollywood has always been terrified of embarrassment, terrified of investors panicking, terrified of anything that might tarnish the image of control. So instead of exposing the truth immediately, Columbia's board tried to handle the problem in-house. They confronted Begelman, suspended him, launched an internal review, and did everything they could to keep the situation quiet. And then, in a decision that seems unbelievable now, they partially reinstated him. Their thinking was simple in the way only a powerful institution can be simple. If they pretended the scandal was under control, maybe it actually would be. But scandals don't shrink in the dark. They grow. Cliff Robertson refused to let the matter disappear. He kept pushing, kept asking questions, kept forcing light into corners Columbia wanted to keep shadowed. Word began to leak. Rumors started spreading. Reporters caught the scent. And soon, the entire industry was buzzing with one impossible truth. The president of a major Hollywood studio had forged checks and used studio funds for himself. The story blew open in the press, and when it did, the public reaction was brutal. Hollywood corruption wasn't new, but this level of brazenness, a studio president cashing checks meant for actors, felt different, even for a cynical city. Begelman's downfall was instant, but Columbia's wasn't far behind. Investors demanded answers, journalists pressed harder, and the studio's attempt to handle everything quietly became its own scandal. Begelman was eventually charged. In court, he pled no contest to grand theft. He didn't deny what he'd done. But he didn't fight the facts either. The judge sentenced him to probation, not jail time, a decision that drew criticism then and still raises eyebrows now. Some said it showed how differently Hollywood power brokers were treated. Others said it reflected the complicated nature of white-collar crime at the time. Whatever the truth was, the sentence added another strange wrinkle to a case that already felt surreal. The fallout inside Columbia was immediate and severe. Executives resigned, leadership collapsed, shareholders demanded structural reforms, and the scandal became a cautionary tale for an industry already struggling with trust and transparency. It was no longer just about a forged signature. It was about what the signature revealed, that the financial oversight inside Hollywood studios was so lax, so trusting, so chaotic, that a charismatic leader could quietly exploit it without anyone noticing, until the wrong person asked the right question. The full story later became the subject of the book Indecent Exposure, which detailed not just Begelman's actions, but the studio culture that enabled them. The book painted a portrait of Hollywood at its most vulnerable, a place where charm could replace honesty, where image mattered more than accountability, and where keeping a scandal quiet was valued more than solving it. What's shocking even now is that Begelman didn't disappear afterward. Hollywood, with its endless appetite for talent and its habit of forgiving the powerful, found places for him. He wasn't given another major studio presidency, but he did secure significant roles, running the United Artists division under MGM, involving himself with Sherwood Productions, and staying close to the world that had once lifted him so high. Some insiders justified it by saying he was too skilled to waste. Others whispered that connections mattered more than consequences, and Hollywood kept proving them right. But no matter how many jobs he held, Begelman never outran his past. The forged check, the scandal, the headlines, they followed him everywhere, clinging to him like a shadow. The industry hadn't forgotten, even when it pretended to. And while he kept working, kept producing, kept trying to rebuild a reputation that once seemed unbreakable, something inside him seemed to fracture under the weight of what he'd done. In 1995, alone in a Los Angeles hotel room, David Begelman passed away. It was a quiet, tragic end to a story built on charm, control, deception, and the illusion of invulnerability. Hollywood didn't talk about it much. It rarely talks about the endings that don't fit the narrative. But for the people who remembered the scandal, the news felt like the final, somber footnote to a chapter the industry never fully processed. Because the Begelman scandal wasn't just about one man forging a check. It was about a system that trusted power too blindly, a system that equated status with honesty, a system that feared bad publicity more than corruption, and a system that, for a brief moment, was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that the people running the studios weren't always the steadiest hands in the room. And that's how David Begelman, once one of the most powerful executives in Hollywood, became the center of one of the most shocking financial scandals Los Angeles had ever seen. A scandal built not on violence or chaos, but on paper, signatures, and the kind of quiet manipulation that only works when no one dares to question the man at the top.